A resolution by the U.S. House of Representatives urges President Barack Obama to send lethal weapons to Ukraine despite the ongoing peace efforts in the region. A crisis in the French port town of Calais reaching its boiling point as British tourists are warned of possible immigrant stowaways. And the U.S. is pledging billions of dollars to the Afghan army until 2017, hoping to reverse the situation which last year alone saw more than 10,000 casualties of violence. A very warm welcome to you from all of us here at RT International in Moscow. I'm Rory Souchet with your latest worldwide headlines. U.S. congressmen have once again called on President Barack Obama to start supplying Ukraine with lethal weapons.
We're rising today as Democrats and Republicans, really as Americans, to say enough is enough in Ukraine.
The world is closely watching what we will do to help Ukraine defend itself from outright assault.
The U.S. House of Representatives has overwhelmingly approved a resolution urging lethal assistance in Ukraine. And that's despite the president's administration recently welcoming the diplomatic and peace efforts on the ground.
If fully implemented, these steps will bring peace to eastern Ukraine for the first time in almost a year. For some in Ukraine, conditions have already begun to improve since February 12th. In parts of the east, the guns have been silenced, and the OSCE has begun to gain access.
Well, despite Victoria Nuland hailing the success of the diplomatic efforts, it does seem that congressmen don't exactly share the same view, believing that weapons, lethal weapons, and not peace talks are the only way forward. Alexei Rashevsky reports.
The resolution, it's not legally binding, but it's urging and calling on the President of the United States to provide lethal military support to Ukraine. Now, of course, we know that in the past several months, the U.S. has provided Ukrainian army with non-lethal support, and there's been a lot of speculation and deliberation here in the United States whether the U.S. President, whether the administration would provide lethal help. But clearly, ever since President Poroshenko's speech at the U.S. Congress last September, when he asked for the military help from the U.S., pressure has been mounting. Just last week, the joint letter from the Democratic and Republican parties to the U.S. President also called on the administration to provide lethal help to Ukraine. And now, obviously, this is escalating into this resolution. But of course, we'll have to wait and see what kind of reaction will follow from the U.S. President.
Back in December of 2014, Congress already passed a bill authorizing $350 million of military aid to Ukraine. It covered so-called defensive weapons such as anti-tank ammunition, radars and unmanned surveillance drones. Barack Obama did sign that bill. Even before that, though, Washington had already been giving various forms of equipment to Kiev. And just recently, in March, it agreed to send many Humvees and drones, but has not yet officially sent any lethal weapons. For all the details on the current Congress resolution on Ukraine, you can head to our website, rt.com. There you can also find out all the very latest about the Minsk peace agreement in the country's east. For now on the program, thousands of immigrants are flocking to the French port town of Calais with a dream of making it to the promised land of Britain by illegally stowing away in vehicles. And the situation is getting so out of hand that UK MPs are now warning tourists to keep an eye out for possible asylum seekers hiding in their cars. Let's take a look at exactly what's been going on there on the northern French coast. Back in August, the town witnessed mass fights between rival migrant gangs over food and control of the best areas to climb onto UK-bound vehicles. A riot police had to intervene with tear gas and rubber bullets. And hundreds of locals held anti-immigrant rallies, blaming asylum seekers for thefts and muggings. And this January, Human Rights Watch published a damning report highlighting the, quote, catastrophic living conditions of migrants. They have no shelter from the cold, no access to showers or toilets, and very limited access to running water. The asylum seekers also claim to be routinely beaten and pepper-sprayed by police, with some even suffering broken bones.
No ask anything. without any reason, without any problems. Just the one police, the sticks beat my noses. One police, beat for legs. After that, my full down.
And British MPs have published a report on the migration failures around the Calais crisis and just what's gone so terribly wrong. Polly Boyker has details.
The UK is recruiting a new force to hold back a tide of illegal immigrants, British holidaymakers. Thousands of tourists are expected to head across the Channel for the Easter break. But when it's time to come home, MPs want the luggage checklist to go beyond suitcases and souvenirs and include stowaways stuck to their vehicles. Truck drivers are already warned not to stop anywhere within 200 kilometres of the port in order to stop this kind of thing from happening. And the number heading for the UK's shores has doubled since September, from 1,300 to over 2,500 now. The British MP's report singles out the Schengen Agreement to blame for the build-up of migrants at Britain's door. It's what allows the free movement of people within the EU, although not through Britain. But it's how those immigrants get into the EU in the first place which is seen as a bigger dilemma. Lax security at the outer reaches allows tens of thousands to flood through Greece, Italy and Turkey's border with the EU. Britain spent £12 million last year beefing up security at its border post in Calais. The results, though, are decidedly hit and miss. Last summer, overzealous Border Patrol officers found a man in the sea, only to discover he was a British triathlete on a cross-channel swimming challenge. Polly Boyko, RT, London.
And coming up in the programme here on RT International, a source of speculation at a work that's taken the contemporary art world by storm in the Netherlands, but it's actually been taking all of them for a ride. That story's coming up. For now on RT International, the United States has assured the Afghan president it will keep funding the country's military for at least 2 more years. Despite significant security challenges, the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says the nation's development shows enormous signs of progress.
There is good news in Afghanistan. Life expectancy has risen by 20 years. Healthcare access has increased dramatically. The number of children in school has risen from some 900,000 who were just boys to 8 million now, with 40% of them girls. The overall economy has been growing, and the combined security forces are now larger and more capable.
Let's show you how Washington wants to help Afghanistan. American funding is expected to maintain the state's 352,000 strong security forces until the end of 2017. According to Obama administration officials, that could mean around $4 billion a year for this year and nearly the same amount for 2016 as well. However, while trumpeting Afghanistan's enormous progress, the realities on the ground certainly seem to be telling a bit of a different story. According to the United Nations, more than 10,000 civilians were either injured or killed last year alone in the country, which is still plagued by Taliban attacks. That is an increase of more than 20% from 2013 and is the highest casualty toll in 5 years. You may find some of the following images distressing because the following pictures went across the world last December. Back then, the Taliban launched an attack on an army-run public school in neighboring Pakistan. 145 people were killed. The vast majority of them were children. And Matthew Ho, a former State Department official and a Marine who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, he believes the U.S. is only interested in serving itself by keeping the Afghan government in power.
It's only going to help maintain the security of Kabul, keep the city-state of Kabul in the hands of the Afghan government, and it will also allow for the continued presence of the Afghan government in urban centers, mainly through the protection of American forces, the bolstering they provide to Afghan security forces, but most especially through the Western money, the American money, and other nations that pump billions of dollars into the Afghan economy. That allows for Ashraf Ghani, as his predecessor Hamid Karzai did, to run basically a patronage network, to run a kleptocracy that's founded on the distribution of corruption and ill-gotten wealth to keep themselves in power.
And staying in Afghanistan, armed gunmen have opened fire on vehicles, including a passenger bus in the country's eastern province of Wardak. Authorities say at least 13 people have been killed and 2 more wounded. Nobody has claimed responsibility for the attack, but it did happen in an area well known for the Taliban. Still to come here on the program, free speech that sometimes hurts.